Thank you for joining us. My name is Anna Berry, and I'm the Director of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. On behalf of the Council and UNH Manchester, we're very pleased you're joining us for the first part of our spring Global Tipping Point series, Insecure Worlds. It's thrilling for me to be back because the last event I was at was in August, and then 3 days later I had twin boys, so if I fall asleep, don't take it personally. I just haven't slept in 6 months. So I've discovered that it definitely takes a village to raise twins, and that's also kind of what it takes to keep our council going, from our members to our sponsors to our partners, and especially our exceptional staff. We really couldn't keep these educational programs going without all of you. And as you may know, the Council is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We're emphasizing nonpartisan this year especially. And that means we're preparing the Granite State for a global future by creating and sustaining international connections that enhance our state's cultural, economic, and civic life. We're building global knowledge and understanding through educational programs for communities and schools on foreign policy, and furthering the development of international leaders in partnership with the U.S. State Department. And in an election year that, at least to me, seems to have been characterized by a lack of civil or comprehensive dialogue on foreign policy, I'm sure you'll agree that our mission has never been more important. So if you haven't already, join us as a member, make a charitable gift, consider attending our annual fundraiser on May 6th, which we just announced. We'll be tackling the link between climate change and security here and abroad. And you can find that and a full list of upcoming events inside your programs. Tonight marks the beginning of our 11th season of Global Tipping Points, and we're honored to have UNH Manchester once again as our partner in presenting the series in collaboration with the institution's Homeland Security, History, Humanities, and Politics and Society programs. We also want to thank our very generous sponsors, Birch Hill Terrace and Granite State Oral Surgery, for underwriting the series. And now, without further ado, so we can all get home later to watch Super Tuesday Returns, I would like to invite UNH Manchester Assistant Professor and Politics and Society Program Coordinator, Melinda Negron Gonzalez, to introduce our guest speaker for tonight's program. Melinda?
Good evening and welcome. I have the great pleasure of introducing our esteemed speaker this evening, Iphigenia Kanara. Iphigenia Kanara currently serves as the Consul General of Greece in Boston. Her work consists of providing a wide array of consular services to the Greek American community of New England, while reaching out to public and private local stakeholders in order to establish greater economic, political, and cultural partnerships. She's also a fellow right now at Harvard University's Weatherhead Center for International Affairs, and she had headed the office of the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Greece and served at the permanent representation of Greece to the European Union. Mrs. Kanara represented Greece in the preparation of both the European Union's Council of Foreign Ministers and the European Council. She also participated in the negotiations for the adoption of the Lisbon Treaty and the establishment of the European External Action Service. Mrs. Kanara holds degrees from the University of Macedonia in Thessaloniki and the London School of Economics. She is a fellow political scientist. While at Harvard, Mrs. Kanara is pursuing research on the impact of the European External Action Service on the effectiveness of the European Union's foreign policy. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Consul General Kanara.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's indeed a great honor for me to be here. So today we will talk about the current refugee and humanitarian crisis in Europe, and I would like to split my presentation into three main parts. Firstly, I will try to present to you the what I call the idea of the crisis. I mean, I will try to show you who are these people, where they are coming from, and where they want to go. Secondly, I will try to show you to present what the European Union and the international community is doing in order to respond to this crisis. And third, but not last, I will try to present you our point of view, what the frontline state, in our case Greece, is doing in order to respond to this emergency, to this humanitarian crisis. So, I'm sure that you have all seen pictures like this. Thousands of hundreds of people continue, despite the weather conditions, to risk their lives daily in order to reach Europe. The huge majority is coming from Syria, from Afghanistan, and from Iraq. They are fleeing poverty, war, and execution, and they are trying to reach Europe in search for a better life. Unfortunately, smugglers and traffickers are taking advantage of their despair and are overfilling, as you can see, totally inappropriate boats, increasing chances of capsizing in poor weather. And as spring approaches, the situation is only expected to get worse. Unless, of course, and this is something that we all wish for, there is a political breakthrough, diplomatic breakthrough in Syria. I will start by showing you the main routes where these people are coming from. As you can see from the map, there are three main routes. First, from the east. As I told you, they are coming from Syria, from Iraq, and from Afghanistan. All those, they are crossing Turkey, and then the other, they try to reach the Greek islands. The distance between the Turkish coastline and the Greek islands is very, very, very small. Actually, if they knew how to swim, which unfortunately they don't, they could have easily crossed. So this is why smugglers prefer this route, because it's easier and it's quicker. The second main route comes from the African Horn, as you see, from Ethiopia and Kenya. This route is split. Once they reach the Mediterranean, they are split. Some are going east, and they are joining the others from Turkey, joining the flow from Turkey, and the rest are going west. From the west, as you can see, they are mainly what we call economic migrants. They are coming from the West Africa, and are all those migrants who are trying to escape poverty in search for better economic opportunities in Europe. With gray, you will see all those they are living actually from Libya, most of them, and they are crossing the Mediterranean in order to reach Italy. With gray shows actually the reported deaths or disappearances. You can see that south of Italy, the death toll is significantly higher, and this is basically for two reasons. First one, the distance is longer, as explained to you, as compared to the Greek-Turkish border, and the second, that the water there is deeper, considerably deeper. I will try with just one slide to show you what happened last year. It was the peak of the crisis. At least we hope so. Nobody knows yet, but 2015 was a very, very difficult year. The overall number of refugees exceeded 1 million coming from the sea, as explained to you earlier. More than 850,000 came to Greece via Turkey, and the rest they went to Italy. Death toll, almost 4,000 people have lost their lives trying to cross the sea and to reach Europe. As you can see from the graphs, we reached the peak in October, when we had reported more or less 7,000 daily arrivals only in the Greek islands. So you can see that the numbers are overwhelming. Now, what's the situation today, the first 2 months of 2016? So only in January and February, which means 2 months, we have already almost 120,000 arrivals both in Greece and Italy. Again, you will see that in Greece the numbers are not comparable. Already 400 people are reported dead or missing. As explained to you earlier, almost 50% of those people are coming from Syria, are fleeing the war in Syria, and the rest are coming from Afghanistan, Iraq, Eritrea, and the rest of the African countries. This is also very interesting. It shows that increasingly, unfortunately, the number of children and women is getting higher and higher. And that means more people are in need, and more, unfortunately, more people are in danger. So, where the refugees want to go? According to the asylum applications that we have so far, and this is per population, you will see that obviously they want to reach Central Europe. Hungary, Sweden, and Austria come first, followed by Finland and Germany. As you can see, in Italy and in Greece, whereas we are the first countries of entry, people obviously they don't want to stay. In our case, the reason is evident. They don't have the economic opportunities that they want, so they want to leave Greece in search for a better life. So we don't have many asylum applications in Greece, and this is why we have a problem, because everybody wants now to leave. What the European Union has been doing. Back in September, the European Union decided upon a plan. The plan was for a number of refugees to be relocated for Greece and Italy in order to ease the situation in these two countries of entry, to be relocated according to certain criteria to all the member states of the European Union. Unfortunately, so far, as you can see from the second bullet, the plan simply doesn't work. It doesn't work because some member states simply refuse to implement it. It's not an obligatory process. It's a volunteer. It's based upon their. They have to want to do that. We cannot force them to accept refugees. So the implementation is a failure. Many reasons. Most important being, at least what I want to say, is that we are already in a very bad economic situation, which means that we cannot provide for our own nationals, let alone to be able to incorporate more refugees, more people in need in our economies. In other member states, we hear arguments such as we cannot accept refugees based on religious or other criteria. And I'm sure you have heard that there are certain member states that cannot accept Muslims exactly because they claim that they have a very homogeneous populations, as if in Greece, we are, I don't know if you know, but 90% of the Greek population is Greek Orthodox. We didn't say that you cannot enter because we are an homogeneous society. This is obviously an argument that they cannot stand. But anyway, we can discuss this later. So the plan doesn't work. And not only the plan doesn't work, but lately, as I'm sure that you have heard, member states, some member states have decided to apply unilateral measures, meaning they have decided to close their borders. Or to put it correctly, not to close the borders, but to apply very strict quotas and restrictions in entry. And when we're talking about restrictions, we're talking about something like 80, 50 refugees per day, which means basically nothing if you take into consideration the numbers that I just showed you earlier. So this situation, closing borders along the Western Balkans route, resulted, as you can understand, in a bottleneck situation in Greece. According to the numbers that we received yesterday, we have 23,000 refugees already stranded around across the country, and the situation is getting worse every day. Given the fact that, as I explained to you, our northern neighbors accept more or less 50, 60 refugees per day, excluding refugees from Afghanistan, and accepting few Syrians. And also at the same time, people continue to come from the sea. So the situation is, as I explained to you, is getting worse. At the moment, what we're doing is that we're trying to, first of all, to provide shelter for those people. We have floating shelters on the islands, basically big cruise ships, and they are waiting on the islands until the situation in Athens is a bit better, and also camps across the country. Here's the situation today, and you will see with the red spots are actually service centers that have been set up across the country for people, for citizens that they want to help and provide the basic for those the refugees, meaning basically food, medical medicines, and clothes, to be able to go into centers and give whatever they can to help. You can see that refugees are basically all over the country. The huge majority is up in the north borders. More or less half of them, they are up in the north, 10,000, and the rest, they are either on the islands or in Athens, trying sometimes on foot to reach from Athens our northern borders, hoping that the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia will open eventually the borders so they can continue the trip up north. As you can understand, more people, higher tensions between the refugees themselves. They're fighting between, on the sense who's going to be the first to go through the borders. Tensions between the refugees and the police, between the refugees and the local population, especially sometimes on the islands. We're learning about the Greek islands, and I'm sure that you know that those people on the islands, they were waiting for those, especially in the summer. They were waiting for those, 3-4 months in the summer to make up. We're talking about islands that they base their economic activity on tourism. So they were waiting for tourists to make up actually for the whole year. And instead of tourists, they were welcoming refugees on the shores. However, I would say that despite the tensions, the overall acceptance, the overall receptions, especially by the people on the islands, was very, very positive. And we have many human stories to present to you, which really makes us very, very proud. And maybe some of you have seen pictures like especially the second one, and those nice ladies have been actually suggested, I don't know how is the right expression, to receive the Nobel Prize for everything that they are doing on the Lesbos Island. And I'm sure that when they received those refugees and when they were doing what you see that they were doing, they didn't have in mind the fact that they would be nominated for the Nobel Prize. They did what they thought it was the obvious and the evident thing to do. Another story, another personal testament of the situation, and another one here. Maybe you have heard that Greece, mainly Greece, and not so much Italy, has been heavily criticized of a poor, let's say, of a poor management of its borders. And I would like to just use a couple of pictures to show you the particularities of a maritime border. So, this is something very familiar to you. This is a crossing between Canada and the States. The car approaches, the immigration officer is waiting, is show your passport, you pass the control, you are in Canada. And here is the situation in the Aegean. As you can understand, these are totally two incomparable situations. As I told you in the introduction, the smugglers are taking advantage of the situation, are using totally inappropriate, in most cases rubber boats, totally overfilled. And not only that, but according to estimates that we have from refugees, they give specific instructions to the refugees where they are when they approach the Greek maritime zone, and they are giving knives also to the refugees to make the boat sink, so as to oblige the in our case the Greek Coast Guard to operate and search them. So basically this is our legal, as you may know, not only moral but mainly legal obligation to save the people who are in the sea. And this is our main duty: search and rescue operations. You will see that these are the main entry points. Another particularity of the Greek maritime border is that it's very long. We're talking about 14,000 miles of coastline with hundreds of islands and little islets. And that means at the same time hundreds of points of entry, which is, as you can understand, very difficult to control. So the first priority for the Greek government, the Greek Coastal Guard, is to operate and search and rescue those people. The 5 hotspots are now fully operational. What a hotspot is doing is mainly registering, taking fingerprints, and identifying basically the refugees, and then temporarily host them in order for them then to be transferred to Athens, and from Athens to the north. And that was the case before the closing of the borders. Now what we're doing is we're trying to delay a bit this process and have them stay a bit longer on the islands, longer in Athens, waiting for the eventual opening of the border. Another commitment that we have towards the European Union, and we need to implement that, and we're working on that, is to create additionally 50,000 additional housing spots for the refugees. And this will be done in the Athens area and also up in the north of the country, in order to find temporary solutions, but solutions that would ensure that those people would have a house. Another crucial detail, which is not detail, is that till very recently we hadn't received any financial assistance from the European Union. Now we do receive, but till the end of 2015, as you can see, the overall cost of those operations, the search and rescue operations, the housing, food, clothing, and all the medical care, costed more or less 2 billion euros, which for a country in the situation, the economic situation of Greece, is something that is very high. You should take that into consideration. The country is in its seventh year of recession. Unemployment is already for the youth is 65%, and for the official unemployment rate is 26%. So you can understand that the situation is very difficult. We struck a deal with our creditors last summer. We did receive a loan, and it is a loan. You know what a loan means? It means that we pay in interest. So it's not an amount of money that was given as a gift to the Greek government. So instead of taking this money and invest it and restructuring our own economy, what we do is we're trying somehow and to the extent possible to provide for those people in need. Of course, there are gaps. In my view, the most important have to do with the almost 10,000 cases of children who have been reported as missing. Some of them, according to what the UN agency said last week, may have joined family members. Some of them, however, are very, very probably to be victims of different kinds of networks, and you can understand what we mean by that. Of course, the overwhelming numbers call for extra housing, food, and Medicare. Definitely, we need to do more in terms of proper registration. However, there is a problem there, and the problem has to do with pledges and promises, mainly by our European partners, but not only by them, that haven't been fulfilled. And I will give you a couple of examples. We have been, you know that in the Aegean, until very recently, Frontex was the only one. Frontex is the European agency responsible for the management of the maritime borders. So Frontex was in the Aegean trying to help the Greek Coast Guard better, let's say, managing our borders. So we have asked from Frontex and from the member states to give us extra 2,000 officers in order to be employed on the spot, out of which we received 800. And not only that, we asked for 150 fingerprint machines in order to speed up the identification process and move the process quicker, out of which we received only 45, 20 if I'm not mistaken, only from Germany. So you can see that this is the main problem for the European Union at the moment. We do have the summits, we do have the conclusions, leaders decide different plans, member states make pledges, make promises, and then at the end of the day, they don't deliver. So this is the problem, and this is why there are gaps in the implementation. We have received significant international support, mainly by the United Nations Refugee Agency, which is very, very active on the ground, mainly on the islands and also on the northern part of the country. Also, various agencies have contributed, and other NGOs, as you can see. But most importantly, at least in my view, what has been striking was the role of the civil society, of the international civil society. I showed you earlier some pictures from Greece, from the Greek islanders, but also groups of volunteers from all over the place. They are asking to come to Greece in order to help our efforts to somehow alleviate the pain of those people. There are cases in the summer where people who were supposed to go for tourism in the Greek island decided to seeing the actual pain in front of their eyes. They decided to forget all about their holidays and spend a couple of weeks on the islands, helping the Greek authorities and the NGOs, receiving the refugees and providing for them the basic, what they needed to survive the first days. Risks ahead. We can definitely discuss this in our discussions, but the risks are huge. Mainly the fact that hundreds of lives continue to be a daily risk. A humanitarian catastrophe is on its way, and this time it's going to be, unfortunately, on the soil of a European, of a Western member state, which is something that it would have been totally inconceivable a few years ago. And let alone the unity of the vision of the European Union, which, as you can see, is definitely at risk. And when we talk about the the European Union, we're not talking only about its greatest achievement, which is at risk, and this is the free circulation of people, of goods and services, which actually is not implemented anymore because of this closing of the borders, but also the fact that the very principles upon which the Union was founded, namely the principle of solidarity, of burden sharing, and of responsibility, are, as you can understand, very, very severely challenged. And I will put a stop here, because I think that I've posed some questions for discussion, and at your disposal if you have any questions.
So we'll open it up to questions. Melinda will moderate, and please raise your hand and wait for the mic to come to you. And start with one question so we can get around to as many people as possible.
What is the Greek government doing in regards to preventing terrorists from penetrating the borders as you accept refugees? Is there a process you can just generally tell us how that's operating and what are shortcomings?
One of our main duties, as I explained to you earlier, is to ensure that there is a proper registration. When we talk about registration, it's exactly what the process that I explained to you earlier. It has to do with taking the fingerprints of those people, double cross them with the database that we have at our disposal in the European level, which means the level of the Interpol, and these are databases that are also double checked with our US partners, with global partners. So this is the first, and this is the first thing which is we should be, and we're trying to do our best in order to ensure that there isn't any leak, let's say. Having said that, when we're talking about this overwhelming number of refugees, I think nobody could exclude that there would be someone who would mislead, misread, I don't know, the system. However, I have to say that the security concerns, which are totally respected, in this case, I wouldn't say come second in our second mind, no. But we do have an emergency situation, humanitarian emergency situation to deal with, and this is our main focus. Another argument that has been heard by those member states who are opposing the European plan for resettlement is that one, the fact that there isn't enough guarantees that terrorists are kept away from the European Union. Having said that, surely you know that in the recent terrorist attacks in Paris, let's say, 8 out of the 9 terrorists that have been identified are all EU grown citizens. They are either born in France or in Belgium, actually, in this case, in the case of Paris attacks, which means that the problem in Europe has nothing to do with importing terrorism. Our problem with terrorism in Europe has to do with the fact that we have been totally incapable of properly integrating our own people, the Europeans, the second generation Europeans who migrated in Europe and who are still kept in, unfortunately, in a ghetto situation outside of the society.
I'm sure I'm oversimplifying this, but it seems like 150 fingerprinting machines would do a lot, and you've only got 20. Can't the United States send you 150 fingerprinting machines?
First of all, we don't have only 20. 20 was...
No, I only got...
I know, yes. This is a question that has to be addressed, first of all, to someone else, and not to me. Obviously, any help would be welcome, and our partners, including the US, have many ways of showing solidarity towards this situation. One way would be the obvious one, to receive more refugees. The other way would be to offer know-how, to offer equipment, in this case, as you suggested, financial aid. There are ways to help. When there is a will, there is a way.
Thank you for coming. Could you talk a little bit about the cross-section of humanity that is fleeing the native countries? It's my understanding that this includes very well-educated people. I just saw in the New York Times today some young people had walked from Syria to Germany. They were looking at the Pergamon Museum. And I wonder if you have some comments about the sorts of people that are doing this.
This is why we're saying that it is a temporary situation, and this is why we're saying that we should all do something to help. Because a huge majority of Syrians, they want to go back. They don't want to stay, not only in Greece, but they have their own businesses. They are very well educated people. There are doctors, businessmen, lawyers, students that are fleeing war. Syria is in the 5th year of the civil war. Those people have exhausted any limits of human dignity. It's impossible for them to live there, so they don't have any other option. And they're waiting for a political solution in order to be able to go back. So definitely, yes, especially the Syrians. I'm not talking about the Africans, because I know that the Africans, they are fleeing poverty and they are in search for better economic opportunities. So I don't know when the situation will get better in Africa. This is totally something that I cannot talk about. But definitely for Syrians, the Syrians are civilians. They are victims of a severe civil war, and they want to go back. From what we hear from them, from what we see, from the way they behave, something. This is why I insist. It's something temporary. It's a huge humanitarian catastrophe, and this is why we should all contribute. And it's not only when you have them on your doorstep, because that is something else. Greece and Italy, and I insist on that, both of them, and in Italy, we have been doing that. We have been searching and saving lives for the past 5 years at least. And it was not only until 2015 when the migrants and the refugees reached the doorstep of the Central European member states, but Europe woke up. Yeah, but this is not the case. I mean, it's not the situation. It's not a new one. So we're only very late. This is what I want to say.
Thank you so much for coming. It's very informative. And so I have a practical question and a political legal one. The practical one, if we give you our email, will you send us your slides? Okay, I'll give you my card. But it seems to me that according to international humanitarian and refugee law, if you're fleeing war, the contiguous state should receive you. But economic migrants, which I think is largely in this case, are not so much entitled. So perhaps one of the better solutions to ease the crisis in Europe would be to adequately fund Turkey to the extent that maybe Jordan is quite responsible in receiving very large numbers of refugees in a stable and not a bad situation. But perhaps Turkey, if it's endowed with sufficient money from the EU, it would spare many of the anguishing security and economic and cultural and religious problems of Europe. So what do you think about increasing the responsibility for Turkey?
Okay, first of all, there are approximately 6.5 million Syrians displaced at the moment, internally in Syria, and also more or less more than 4 million outside of Syria. Out of these 4 million, 2.5 are already in Turkey, and almost 1 million in Jordan and Lebanon, which means they are already in the neighboring countries. The European Union, accepting totally your argument, decided last month to give 3 billion euros to Turkey in order for them to be able to provide housing and better services to those people in order to stem the flow. However, until very, very recently, we haven't seen a decrease in the numbers of refugees who are still trying to cross Turkey and risk their lives in the Aegean and come to Greece. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know if the refugees themselves don't want to stay in Turkey, if the services and the services provided in Turkey are not good enough, or if actually they are somehow encouraged to leave Turkey.
Okay, sorry. Wait for the mic. Thank you for your presentation. I just am presupposing that in Europe there's some countries that are more receptive than others to the refugees in terms of helping to resettle them. I was curious, which are the leading ones, leading countries in terms of receiving the refugees, and secondly, what are the most successful methodologies that they are employing to resettle the refugees in their own countries? What are the best practices?
Okay, first of all, this is not a blame game. This is not my role, but it's all out there, so you can definitely see that. So Germany, and you know very well the bilateral relationship so far between Greece and Germany. So I'm not saying that, I'm saying that because it's true and we have also recognized that. Germany was the country that led this what we call the open door policy for refugees. They have been very, very receptive. Chancellor Merkel has been, still is heavily criticized internally for this policy. And they have received more than 800, almost 1 million refugees. All the refugees that managed to cross the Greek borders in 2015, more than 2/3 are already in Germany. The German arguments were that Germany was, all Europe actually, but Germany has an aging population. Germany is in need for manpower, and also the fact that Germany has the economic capacity to integrate new waves of refugees. Also, the Scandinavian countries followed in welcoming, at least during the first period of the crisis, the refugees, but then increasingly, and as the crisis went on, even in, let's say, in Sweden, which has been traditionally very, 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 very welcoming, there were voices, mainly from opposition, that started to put some limits. So these two I would put in the front line of the most receptive, of the more receptive. And now going to the other end of the spectrum, I would say that the Central European countries, and lately, unfortunately, Austria, which is an old member state, showed very, how am I supposed to say that and be very diplomatic? I don't know, decided to implement unilateral measures contrary to international law, contrary to the acquis communautaire, contrary to any principle of solidarity and burden sharing. And these decisions led to the bottleneck situation that we described in Europe, and to this tragic situation and humanitarian crisis, this time in Greece.
But we thank you very, very much. I've enjoyed it immensely, and many people here have. I want to move different spin on this whole terrorist issue. I mean, it comes up constantly. But it strikes me that there are a couple of givens. Number one, in terms of human flow, you know, if there's a will, there's a way sort of thing. So the thing that keeps coming to mind is without the resources, the necessary resources for you and fellow European nations to address the very real problem of these refugees, what happens when they're not aided, they're left pretty much to their own devices in terms of the opportunity for radicalization? We've already seen that radicalization can very well be homegrown. We have it here as well, most assuredly. Europe has seen it in many nations, including what happened in Belgium and France. So now what happens if the support is there in terms of the radicalization of these people that see there's no hope over an extended period of time, and for the generation that comes after that?
This is definitely a huge. This is definitely a huge risk in Europe at the moment, and this is a vicious circle of extremism. I don't know how aware you are of the political situation in some member states in Europe, but lately we have witnessed in many European countries the rise of extremists, either left or right wing. And this situation is a perfect, I don't know how I'm supposed to characterize it, it's a perfect excuse for them, or it's the perfect argument they use in order to make an appeal to the fear, the sentiment of fear of the citizens, of the public, which is the worst thing that can happen, and to drive the public, to drive the citizens by using this kind of arguments. So definitely yes, there is the risk of further strengthening this movement, and again, this is something that would have been totally inconceivable in Europe a few years ago. And this is one of the arguments used by those who are against a more open and more welcoming policy. The fact that if we receive more refugees of different race, religion, cultural background, we will end up losing our own European identity. This is an argument. However, when you have, and I repeat that I don't know how evident, I tried to make it evident in the presentation, when you have such a humanitarian crisis on your doorstep, your first priority is to save the lives of those people who are in need. It's not, of course, doing in parallel your proper job in terms of registration and identification. I'm not underestimating the work that we have to do in the frontline states. I mean, in terms of securing and make sure that all those who are entitled to international protection, which means people fleeing war and persecution, are those who are actually coming into Europe. Definitely. But these are two processes that have to go hand in hand. We cannot leave those people on their own. I mean, we cannot. You have to choose. Either you insist and you keep first of all your own dignity, because it's also a matter of how you perceive your own civilization. It's not only what you want to show to the others, but also how. And this is something that at least I can say, personally, that there aren't very many things that I would have been very proud as Greek lately in terms of, let's say, our financial achievements. But for that, I am very, very grateful to those people, mainly the islands, the way they have received those people and the way they have responded. I would have been totally ashamed if they would just push them back on the sea, or it would have been turn their backs on them.
Thank you. you talk. I'm just wondering, with all the refugees coming from Syria, from a Greek and European standpoint, going at the source of what's happening in Syria, what do you prefer or recommend the U.S. to do with regards to the whole civil war going on in Syria?
Okay, the first step, I don't know how long it will last, has already been made. And this is the first step, which is a ceasefire. Because without the ceasefire, we cannot have proper political and diplomatic talks take place. So this is the least you would expect from a global power to do. To intervene substantially and try to find a solution. The political transition is, this is what we expect. You asked. If you imply any military action in the European Union, we are not in favor of further military action on the ground. What we suggest is that we need all the parties involved, and this is also the actual position of Secretary Kerry himself. He said that we need some time to give this a chance, to give actually the talks a chance to be back. There's no other way. They have to sit, military actions so far and the civil war so far clearly have shown that they don't lead anywhere. The 5th consecutive year of civil war. The whole country, actually, not the city. The country is basically destroyed. They will need more than 15 years to come back to where it was. Its economy, its infrastructure, its welfare state, education, it went back ages.
I think you just partially answered my question, but what do the Syrian refugees need to see beyond this ceasefire to feel secure to go back to their homes?
It will take a while. It will take a while because there are cities that they have been having, 50-60% destroyed in terms of infrastructure. There are no schools, no hospitals. Their own houses are destroyed. So their businesses. So imagine for the daily life to go back to the way it was. It will take a long time. No, but we have to start somewhere.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one follow-up question. The organizations that you see on the ground, if we want, obviously you need money. The whole situation needs money. Of the organizations on the ground, who do you see are doing a really phenomenal job of utilizing the resources that they're receiving?
I wouldn't want, to make any specific reference. I would say that all of them, from the smallest NGO who is active on the ground, in the UN Refugee Agency, who has invested personnel, infrastructure, know-how, and help us enormously on the ground. From the civil society, individuals are coming, so everybody's helping. And it's not only, as I told you, on the islands, but the same situation is, you can see that increasingly also in the mainland, where nowadays exactly the last, this week actually, this past week, exactly because of the latest developments in the borders, you see now that the local communities, municipalities, the church is very involved. In our case, in Greece, we had actually we still have a ministerial meeting ministerial visit in Boston, and I heard the minister saying one of his interlocutors that it was, I think, the day before yesterday that all of a sudden 2,000 refugees came from Lesbos, from the island of Lesbos to Athens, and they had in very few hours to clean the stadium in order to temporarily host those people. And the house, the gymnasium it was a stadium. The stadium was prepared in 5-6 hours, and it was quick. But there was an issue with the food. It was 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and they needed lunch. So it was the local government, the mayor of Athens, who called the church, and the church was able within 2 hours to provide 1,000 meals. So the whole system is engaged, and there is no other way. There is no other way. And believe me, if you were there, you would have been all involved. You have to be human, not only emotionally, but you have to do something to help. This is what you do. It's instinctive.
We have time for 2 more, maybe?
I just want to make one point of the thing about the neighboring countries. Most of those refugee centers and detention camps, they're not there to get people integrated into the local societies. So I just don't see that anybody would prefer to be in a detention camp for a decade or a decade and a half in a neighboring country. And I think that's why these people are going to Europe. I read in the New Yorker that some of these people are paying 1,000, 1,500 euros to the traffickers to get them to the right places in Europe and get the right documents. But the thing that concerned me was when you said families being broken up and children being lost. And I'm wondering with this emphasis on fake documentation to get through to a stable place, and if there's trafficking going on with children, what kind of effort is being made to establish a database of these families to try to get the reunification of those that are separated?
This is exactly where first of all, can I make a comment about the tariff that we said, which is also indicative of the networks that are in place? As you correctly said, they are paying a fortune only to cross from the Turkish line to the island of Lesbos, which, as I explained to you in the beginning, actually if they knew how to swim, they could have done it. It's $700 to $1,000 per person. So for 2 miles. Anyway, until the last $1,500 to reach from Syria to reach the Turkish coastline. Another route that has become very popular lately is what they call the Arctic route. And this is the case for especially those Syrians who can afford it because it's very, very expensive. But on the other hand, is the one that actually ensures that they will actually reach Europe. So what they do is they take they drive or they find other ways to leave Syria, and then they take the plane. They go to Russia, and from Russia they fly up in Norway. This costs $10,000 for person, for one person. So you can see, and this is why exactly the closing of the borders is not a solution, because people in need, and especially the traffickers, will continue to find alternative ways to reach Europe. Closing the border between Greece and its northern neighbors will temporarily lead to a huge crisis in Greece, but it will not stop the flow. It's like we see the tree and we lose the forest. This is a kind of short-sighted policy that we implement in Europe at the moment. So it's not anyway, so it's not a solution. Coming back to the issue of the separated families, this is where it's definitely an issue. It's the most important issue for Israel, as I explained to you earlier. And this is where the UN, the United Nations, has focused its attention at the moment, trying to create the hotspots across Europe and try to double cross the registration and secure that there are cases of kids that need to be reunited are at the end of the day reunited with their families. The Syrians, one of the reasons that they wanted to go to Scandinavia is because in Scandinavia, in Sweden, there were already many Syrian families. So they wanted to go there in the first place to reunite with their families. so they know the final destination, and this is something that helps.
Hello. I have a question with regard to NATO deploying ships in the Aegean, and I believe it is to help with the trafficking that we were talking about, but it also seems as if it's to babysit the sea line between Turkey and Greece. So could you talk a little bit more about what the goal is with having NATO in the Aegean?
So the alliance, the European Union, to start from the beginning, the European Union asked from the alliance to come to the Aegean and support the European Union's response. Okay, so the NATO came to the Aegean, is already actually in the Aegean, to help the Europeans, and in that case Greece and Frontex, to better implement the plan and to better manage the borders. At that moment, today as we speak, the rules of, I wouldn't say engagement, because it's not actually an operation, but the how NATO ships will operate, exactly because of the differences between the two countries, are not clear yet. However, its main mission is to prevent, okay, is to prevent the incoming flow of refugees. Now, it's not clear yet where the NATO ships will operate. Be it, in the Turkish, the most probable scenario is that it will be in the international waters, it's in between. Although, if you know the area, you will see that it's so close that it's still very. But what we need in that case is both countries, and especially Turkey, to cooperate and show the goodwill that needs to be shown in order for NATO and for Frontex to be able to do their job and manage the flows, which means keep the flows from Turkey to the Greek islands. Because as I told you, the key and the door is in Turkey, and I totally agree with you. Once they are on the boat, and once they are already in the Greek territorial waters, it's a lost case. They are already in Europe. As I explained to you, we are obliged to save their lives. So the key to stem the flow is to keep them in Turkey and better manage the situation in Turkey.
Some are saying that Europe is committing suicide with all that's going on. Do you have any information that speaks to demographic projections, specifically as relates to the growth of Islam in Europe?
Demographic projection?
Can you repeat it again with the microphone?
Sorry. Do you have any information that speaks to the demographic projections for the future as relates specifically to the growth of Islam in Europe?
No, I don't have any projections, and as I told you, it would be very, very risky to do any, exactly because, let's say, the Syrians, they want to go back, they don't want to stay, and I don't know what will be the situation with the rest of the refugees. I would agree, however, with your first assessment that Europe is committing the suicide in terms of mainly of political suicide. Exactly because we are putting at risk one of our major achievements in the last century. That was the fact that 28 states that used to be at war with each other managed to form a union, an economic union mainly, and also up to an extent a political union. Managed to keep themselves from rivals and from war for 55, 60 almost years consecutive. And this is all at risk exactly because we cannot agree on how to implement and how to manage this crisis. And we're talking about numbers that would have been totally manageable if there was a common approach by the European Union. Even if by the end of 2015 we expect the total amount of Syrians, of refugees in Europe to reach 2 million what we call a proper burden sharing. If there was a will by the member states to help in this direction, it would have been easy to manage this, temporary of course. There are member states that they want to integrate, they have the need to integrate because of the factors that I explained to you, the aging population, of the fact that they are an economic boom and they need workers. There are member states that they want more refugees, they want to, and the European Union as a whole is in favor of legal migration, is in favor of welcoming experts and scientists and researchers. We don't want to close the borders. That's not the goal. But there is no such a thing. There is no such a thing as a united approach. And this is the crime, the political crime. And this is why, Schengen is not a problem. Another thing, I don't know how many of you are aware of Schengen. Schengen is a 26-state free passport area. They say that we have to kick Greece out of Schengen, which basically cannot happen because legally you cannot kick out a member from Schengen. But anyway, in practice, Schengen means that you close the borders. So you close the borders between Greece and its neighbors, and you seal Europe, which is for someone who has a basic knowledge of European laws and European acquis, he would say that it's totally stupid. Exactly because Greece has no land borders, it's a Schengen state. So unless you expect the migrant to take the business class plane and land from Athens to Copenhagen, then you don't, you do nothing by just, by kicking Greece out of Schengen. So, Schengen, putting fences, building fences, discriminating on the basis of religion, discriminating on the basis of race, are not the solution that we need. Definitely.
About these issues, and we thought we had problems in America, but we're not alone. We hope to see you all next month on April 12th with Juliet Kayam to talk a little bit more about Homeland Security. So have a great evening. Thank you very much.